a lot of my friends growing up were other immigrant kids, Chinese, Indian, Cameroonian, South Korean. To be honest, they were the ones in many cases where I felt most comfortable being with. And it wasn't like a surface level thing or anything in terms of, oh, your parents are immigrants, my parents are immigrants too. A lot of times, like that wasn't maybe verbalized at all. It was just in terms of like knowing that when I went over to their house, like I would hear another language spoken, like I did going home to a Ghanaian family, or smelling kind of the traditional dishes or spices coming from the kitchen, just like the feelings I would get when I was at home, or just kind of like that understanding of, yeah, I know why you have to get such good grades at school too, to maybe be potentially a lawyer, engineer, a doctor because of your parents, and maybe they didn't verbalize the need for you to be one of those things, but it was kind of that intrinsic pressure, right? Like the parents came here, like it's your job to take it another step further. A lot of times, like they were the ones, other immigrant kids were the ones who I didn't have to assimilate for, right? Like in every other situation, interactions with other people, it's like I got to be American or black, whatever that means. Or on the flip side, like maybe leaning more into the cultural heritage, like the Ghanaian side for me when I was with Ghanaian family members. With them, they understood, right? Is like they're bicultural as well. They stand between cultures. And so I could just kind of be myself. I don't need to lean into one side or the other. I could just be kind of neutral, be who I am. And that kind of leads me to what I wanted to talk about today, how second gen kids can kind of amplify each other and in turn the world around them. So a lot of times people talk about like just how important it is to see someone who looks like them or who is of their identity succeeding in a particular avenue, to like want to do that same avenue for themselves. And like for me, being a second gen African, specifically seeing another second gen African flourish in the field I wanted to make a career out of was like really pivotal for me. So for those of you who don't know, I am a journalist. I cover by day the NFL for NFL on Fox. And a few years out of school, there was a younger reporter who's really popping off. He's just a few years older than me, but his name is Master Tesfatsian, Eritrean American guy, and he had covered the then Washington Redskins for the Washington Post and was at Bleacher Report, where he really blew up doing a series called Untold Stories, where a lot of times like he was playing pool with like NFL guys or uh, NBA guys and getting them to open up about untold stories. And it was exactly the kind of storytelling that I wanted to do. And to see him doing that was super dope. Just as a second gen African, specifically because like a lot of times, like, yeah, you will see other black people like around sports, but like just to have just to see someone of a similar cultural context, right, in terms of having African immigrant parents was huge. Because a lot of times like the role model like African immigrant kids are like in the STEM fields or they're lawyers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like for me, as someone who is interested in sports and who wanted to make a career out of sports storytelling, to see another second gen African succeeding at a high level in sports storytelling like meant the world to me. And I remember how excited I was to be able to pick his brain a few years several years ago at this point, but just pick his brain about kind of his process, and just kind of got to tell him like how cool it was for me to see like another second gen like African doing that. So another thing too with second gen kids, like why I think we can build off each other, relate to each other so well, is because of like that global mindset that we have. Because that's at the root of our reality. Our reality is a bicultural identity. We have to think beyond America because we aren't just American. And like I think like specifically for me being Ghanaian American, especially as I've gotten older, I've thought more and more about, okay, like how can I serve Ghana? How can I go back to Ghana? How can I build there? How can I help out my people in Ghana? Or it's having empathy towards immigrants, the immigrant experience, because your parents going through stuff, or you know family members, aunts, uncles, cousins that are going through stuff. Either they did or are currently going through stuff. Maybe especially because of the current climate. And so I think not only does that maybe help us as second gen kids, like kind of help us relate to each other, but also be like of service to the world because we show cultural sensitivity. That's something that the world around us can take from us. So all that is to say, as second gen kids, many of us just kind of get it right. Like you can relate to that. You had a similar experience as that, even if we had ultimately different situations. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here in terms of bringing all that together through personal stories to build that community amongst us so we can continue to amplify each other. All right, y'all. Peace out.